I am a licensed driver, and I know how to drive. I just don't happen to have one right now.
From the bed, turn the spark to a fire. Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila.
Hello, Horizontal lovers. Horizontal is the podcast about sex, love, and relationships of all kinds that's recorded while lying down wearing robes. A typical recording is long and languorous and lasts between 3 and 5 hours. When I release it, I divide it into 2 parts if we recorded for 3 hours and 4 parts if we recorded for 5. The first half of the conversation is available in all the podcast places, and the second is available exclusively to patrons of the Horizontal Arts. For access to the full Horizontal, and to be part of eradicating shame, diminishing loneliness, and alchemizing human connection, become a patron of the Horizontal Arts by navigating directly to patreon.com/horizontalwithlila. That's spelled patreon.com/horizontalwithlila. And you have to navigate directly because all adult creators who are deemed adults by Patreon are hidden. So we have a long way to go, friends. At the end of each long-form conversation, I ask my guest to tell me a story. And the story marks the conclusion of our patron episode together. It can be any personal story that falls under the broad umbrella of intimacy, sex, love, or relationships of any kind. I've had stories of being carried down a mountaintop by a hunky guide, episode 10 with Elaine, watching your wife have a miscarriage, giving your father's body to science, episode 92 with Dr. Alexandra Solomon, a friend breakup. And there was one particularly epic tale about the Cretan resistance, thievery, journeying, and a real human skull. That's episode 31 with Matthew Stillman, and I highly recommend. Don't miss it. One of these stories on its own is a Horizontal quickie. My live event, the Horizontal Storytelling Pajama Party, is an evening full of quickies. I get horizontal with my guest just like we do when we record a full episode, wearing robes, sharing a pillow, microphone above us, gazing upward as though stargazing, or post-coital, or whispering into the wee hours of a really good sleepover. At a Horizontal Storytelling event, there's a whole audience getting horizontal with us in their pajamas. When I ask my guest to choose this story, I tell them that it can have any kind of tone or outcome, as long as it's a story that they truly desire to tell me. Because if they have the impulse to tell the tale, and especially if they're also a little bit trepidatious to do so, it will be the right one. It will be a narrative that other people need to hear. This quickie was recorded live in June 2019 at Horizontal Storytelling, the Summer Pride Edition. We all donned rainbow pajamas, noshed on milk and cookies, and curled up together, all 50 of us, to listen to 5 storytellers from across the LGBTQIA+ community. In this quickie, I lie down with Christopher Burris. Christopher Burris is an actor, director, and visionary creative from Asheville, North Carolina. He's the director of the Afro-futuristic queer sci-fi funk musical, Bring the Beat Back, by Derek Lee McFadder. I first met Chris when he directed a reading of America's Favorite Pastime by Dennis A. Allen II, in which I got to play one of my favorite roles of all time, a dominatrix mother, in a story with complicated issues of race and sex, and transaction, and correctness, and parenthood. The first day I showed up for rehearsal, the guy playing the young white friend of the young black male lead wasn't there yet, and Chris read the part. Chris is a genius. He read that part, the part of a white kid who uses hip-hop slang and the N-word in casual conversation, better than any of the white guys who I saw read that part. He was hysterical. I basically barely stopped laughing for long enough to read my own part. So not only is he a generous, warm, thoughtful, space-holding director, but his talents as an actor and a mimic can't help but infuse any rehearsal room with a robust sense of someone who understands the theater deeply, like a partner dancer who knows both how to lead and how to follow. Any chance I get to work with him, I leap to it, because I know it will confront me with the complexities of being human in this society. And I know that in the rehearsal room, there will be so much laughter. Christopher is also a patron of the podcast, and when I found out that he became one on Patreon, I wrote him this little note. Dearest Chris, from one artist to another, you have my deepest thanks for your patronage of my work. I am moved to tears by your belief in me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can find Christopher Burris on Twitter at Mr. Burris, all spelled out, Mister Burris, Mr. Burris, Mr. Burris, Mr. Burris. In this episode, Christopher tells us a story about driving while black, his best friend Satchmo, a SpongeBob car, contact lenses, relationshiping, and really, really seeing people. Come lie down with us in Bushwick, Brooklyn, for a story Christopher called Black Men Can't Drive.
Sorry, we lost some folks.
That's okay. How are you?
Honestly, I'm really concerned about my relationship, and it has me split. And it's very distracting, and I'm trying to focus and stay present because I care so much about what I'm doing. And I'm mad. I'm really mad.
You mad at yourself?
No.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And then you tell me a story.
I will tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about why I can't drive. I can't drive. I actually can drive. I can't drive because I can't see. So a few years ago, I found out that I had an eye condition that I think is pronounced keratoconus. Don't quote me on that. It's got a lot of letters. I don't really understand it. But basically what it means is that I have to wear hard contact lenses. That glasses don't change the way that light comes into my eye. And so if I'm wearing glasses, it means I can never really see. When I have hard contacts, my vision is almost 20/20. So it's very extreme, and it completely changes the way that I receive people, that I take them in part also because I'm an empath as well. So if I can see someone's face, my experience with them is so drastically different from if I can't see their face, if I can't see their eyes. Actually, Dennis, the writer that we worked with, when I told him, I said to him, do you know how I never know who anyone is? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I can't see.
Oh my God.
And he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Because what's amazing is that the brain does all of this stuff to keep you from realizing you can't see. So I had gone months. As a matter of fact, I was doing the Lincoln Center Director's Lab, and I remember having like a panic attack. I had this image of myself walking into the room with a sea of white faces, and I could not distinguish any of them. And I said to myself, yo, you need to chill. Like, that is just some messed up stuff. You need to get over yourself. It's going to be fine. And right after that, I was hanging out with my best friend, whose name today is Satchmo.
Satchmo.
Let's hope that I keep Satchmo all through the story.
Good luck.
So my best friend Satchmo. So we were meeting to hang out one day, and I was meeting him in Midtown, and I was across the street, and I was waiting for him, but wasn't looking for him. And he was across the street, and all of a sudden I see this energy coming towards me. His arms are waving, and he goes, "What? You can't see me?" And I'm like, I wasn't looking. And then I go, well, why wasn't I looking? Oh shit, I can't see.
Oh my God.
That was the moment that it sort of came to me. So I was a little surprised a couple of months later that the universe sent me a job opportunity that seemed really cool, but then it also seemed not really cool because it seemed not like the job for me. Mm-hmm. And this is why. So I had a friend whose name for the story is Charlie. And Charlie hit me up to say, I got a job, man. He's like, I am doing this cross promotion between SpongeBob and Toyota. Right? So they have a SpongeBob car. And I need somebody to work with me and to go from California to Florida doing promotions all along the way. All I need you to do is drive and work with the kids who are going to come look at the car. I said, that's all you need? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I am a good driver and I'm really good with kids. Now, there's a couple of problems. First of all, I don't have a driver's license. Now, I am a licensed driver and I know how to drive. I just don't happen to have one right now. But if you want me to do this, dude, I'll see if I can go get a driver's license before we have to leave. He is in a bind, right? He's like, that is the worst news ever. But I don't know what to do. And I'm like, okay, really quick. And so here's the other problem. The other problem is I had just gotten my first pair of contact lenses. And I don't know if anybody out there has had hard contact lenses, but let me tell you, they're not fun. There's several things that aren't fun about them. One, they fall out anytime they want to.
Oh my God.
I mean, the wind, sometimes I put an eye drop in, that makes them fall out. I mean, they just fall out when they want. The other thing is, they're really expensive. They're $500 for each lens.
Oh my God.
Right? And I'm only allowed to get one pair a year through insurance. So I get these contact lenses, I get this job offer, and I recognize that I can do it, but if I lose a contact on the road, it's over. I won't be able to see. There will be nothing to do. So I took the job. Because I wanted the money. And also Satchmo and I needed a little bit of space. Satchmo, my best friend, he and I had sort of gotten into a thing called a relationship accidentally. Neither one of us was planning it. Actually, I think both of us at that time were actively against being in relationships, which was a part of our friendship. I was so against being in a relationship. And the day before Thanksgiving of that year, I realized, oh crap, we are in a relationship. It's too late. And I realized it and realized that we had been in it for a while, but I knew that he didn't know yet. So I had to wait because I can't tell him we're in a relationship. You know, he's got to figure it out on his own, just like I figured it out on my own. Like, you got to figure this out, dude. Like, if I tell him it's going to be the worst thing ever, he's got to figure this out. So he does. He figures it out all with no help from me, all on his own. Mm-hmm. One day he says, "You are not my boyfriend." Oh, wait. Are you my boyfriend? Oh, you are my boyfriend. So this is great because he got it and I didn't have to say anything. So this trip is perfect because it's like I kind of felt like we needed the space. We needed the space because I needed him to be really... I wanted to be sure about what I was doing, but I also really needed him to be sure about what he was doing because the friendship mattered so much. When I say that he was my best friend, I am not using that lightly in any way, shape, or form. Like, he was the most important relationship on a day-to-day basis at that time in my life. So, trip, perfect. I'll get paid. Hopefully I won't die, and we'll both get a little bit of time to figure out how we ended up here in a place where neither one of us wanted to be. So, we get on the road. Now, when I fly out to go meet Charlie, I recognize right off the bat that there's a little bit of tension between the two of us, which is odd because I was feeling good about the fact that he had reached out to me and said, hey, I need you. I need somebody that I know to do this gig with me. And I'm like, great. But at the same time, I recognized that for a while, I'd been feeling like there was some tension between us. And as an empath, a lot of the times I felt like when I was around him, I was getting on his nerves and I was feeling it. So it was like kind of stressful. So we go on the trip and I'm like, well, can you just give me sort of an idea of, what the first few days are going to look like? And he kept saying, yeah, I am. But he never got that information to me. So right when I get there, I recognize that there's a little bit of a power trip, that he didn't give me that information because he wanted to assert his control. I mean, this was his gig. He was in charge, and he was not letting me have any of the information beforehand. Cool. All I gotta do is drive and be nice to the kids. I can do those. So we get on the road. We go when we stop at different places, and we show off the SpongeBob car. We generally we sort of park in like a mall or someplace. The idea is to have the kids play with the car while you get their parents to sign up, for on the Toyota mailing list. So here we are traveling across the country. Things are very, very tense between the two of us. And like I said, I'm not exactly sure why. I just feel like his fuse is so short when it comes to me. It wasn't a great time to be on the road as a black man because this is right after Eric Gardner had been killed in New York. And so that was really, really on my heart and on my spirit. So the first day in which something happened to that I was able to get a little bit of insight was a press conference. Eric Gardner's wife, they had asked his wife, do you forgive the cops that murdered your husband? And her response was, my kids don't have a father this Christmas. No, actually, I don't forgive them. And so I'm sitting in my room and I'm watching this press conference. And Charlie comes in. And at the time, it's not just Charlie, but it's Charlie along with one of the other big bosses who had just sort of flown out for that day or for a couple of days to check in on us. And they come in and the big boss sees what's going on the TV and he says, hey, who is that? That Heather B? And I said, no, that's not Heather B. That's Eric Gardner's wife. And he says, but you know who Heather B is, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know who Heather B is. Rapper, first season of The Real World. Yeah, I know who that is. So Charlie can sense that I'm I've got feelings about this question, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes, well, tell us what was going on. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what happened and this is what she said. And Charlie goes, well, at least they apologized. And he stopped himself. But it was too late. Because in that moment, I was like, oh, we're on this road together. And you've been someone that I've considered a friend for a long time. But now I'm worried if you can actually see me or not.
Yeah.
If your response is, at least they apologized, I'm not exactly sure if you know who I am and how I relate to the things that are happening around us in this world. So I didn't talk to him about that, right? Of course. I'm processing this all on my own. Also trying to process what's happening with me and Satchmo. trying not to lose my contacts. Trying not to get pulled over because I don't have a license. So at some point, I think we're right around the time we get to Georgia, there's a third person who comes and joins us on the team. His name is Gabe. That's his real name. And Charlie and I both knew Gabe, and Gabe's a really energetic, outgoing, wears his heart on his sleeve kind of a guy. And it was really great because having that third person really shone a light on the tensions that were happening between Charlie and I. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there was one day that I was late. And I was late because my phone had not been plugged in, and I thought it was, and it had died during the night. Now, we are all staying on the same floor in the hotel. So Charlie goes by my room, goes downstairs into the car, and waits for 15 minutes. and then calls the phone in the room to yell at me for being late. And I'm like, yes, I am late, but you had to walk by my room. Like, there were so many opportunities. You know where I was. Why would you wait this long and then tell me? Like,
Just so you could yell?
Just so that you could yell. So he is furious. You can't be late. He is going in on me. 2 days later, Gabe loses the company credit card. And I'm sitting back like, I can't wait to see this. This is gonna be so good. And he is cool as a cucumber. Cool. He calls the office. Oh yeah, we lost the company credit card.
Charlie.
What'd I say?
No, just like he.
Yeah. Totally cool.
It was Charlie.
Charlie's totally cool. No yelling. He's not mad at Gabe at all. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly there's something to that. Gabe was such a great person to have there for a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason was that because he was such a sort of open, big-hearted sort of guy, he really did see people. And one of the things that happened during the trip is that Gabe came to me to talk about how I was interacting with the kids. He was saying to me, like, I know that you're doing the job, right? Like, you're doing the job of greeting the kids and making sure the parents know that they're safe and all of that. He says, so I know that you're not aware of actually what's happening. And I'm like, what do you mean, dude? He's like, they're not just giving you their kids, man. These people trust you. Like, they're looking at you and they are trusting you with their children. Mm-hmm. And I started to think about that for quite a while. I've always been good with kids. That wasn't a joke. Mm. My mother was sort of the family babysitter, right? Every single cousin in my family has spent time at my house. And so all of my younger cousins, I was a part of watching them and taking care of them. So I've always been good with children and loved them. But to have this reflected back to me in this moment was a really hot thing, because what I realized was that I had separated myself from this love of children for several reasons. First of all, as a late 30s at the time Black man who likes children, it's really hard to live in the truth of that and not feel like I'm being judged. Like I'm being watched, like I'm not being trusted. And somewhere, not too long before the trip, it came to my attention that my fears were not just irrational. That my father had actually been telling my sisters that they should watch the kids around me, because it had come to his attention. I did not tell him myself, but he learned through one of my other siblings that I had been molested as a kid. And so his reply to my sisters was, men who are molested molest. So don't let him around the kids. And so that had affected me in my relationships with my nieces and nephews. You know, two of my sisters were like, in one ear, out the other, I know you, I'm not worried about that. But there was one sister who didn't necessarily feel like I would do it, but was worried about the judgment that our father would have if she let the kids around me. So I'd really separated myself from the kids in the family. But I didn't do it intentionally, and I didn't recognize that I had done it. And it wasn't until I'm on the road and I'm meeting all of these kids and having all of these wonderful interactions. Wonderful. There was a mother, a Black woman, who's coming down the street with her daughter, and I go out to greet the daughter, and I'm too much energy, and she gets scared, and she starts to cry. And I was like, oh no, sweetie, no tears, no, let's fix this. What do I got to do, Make her feel safe, like make it okay. And so I go and I take her to the SpongeBob car, and she stops crying and she gets settled in and she feels comfortable and safe. And I go back up to the mother and I look at her and I'm like, you could have warned me. And she says, yeah, I thought about it, but I knew you'd figure it out. And it was such a gift to feel seen in that way, right? So Gabe leaves. So now it's just Charlie and I, and we're in Florida, but we're heading back to California. We're around Georgia somewhere, and I say to Charlie, I'd like to do as little driving in Texas as possible. Mm-hmm. Charlie says, why? Just the question in and of itself suggested to me that no matter what I said, he was not going to be able to hear it because it needed to be something that he had seen for himself. So I dropped it right up. He said, why? And I said, never mind. So when we are driving and we're in Texas and he says, hey, I need you to drive. I'm like, okay, hey, you're in charge. You're the boss. I'll drive. So we pull over. I get into the driver's seat. As we've already discovered tonight, drivers have the right to choose the music. Right?
Indeed.
So I put on my 80s mix that's all created around New Edition, who's the best boy band of all time. And I cannot remember the first song that comes on, but it is jamming. I am happy. I am going to pretend like Charlie isn't here, and I'm going to listen to this music and have a great time. Before the first song ends, I get pulled over. And the cop comes over to the passenger side, and I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is it. I am in Texas, and I do not have a license. So I give him my ID, pretending like everything is just fine. And he takes it, looks at it. He's like, this isn't a license. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. But, I am a licensed driver. It was from the state of Oregon. I just lost that license, and I don't want to go back to Oregon to get a new one. Duh, So he's like, okay, you got two options here. You can go to jail, or I can write you a ticket. Which doesn't sound like options to me, but that's what the man said. He says, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to look you up. And if I don't find that you had a license in Oregon, there's going to be a problem. And he goes back to the car. Charlie and I sit literally in complete silence the whole time. He doesn't say a word. After a bit back at the car, the cop comes up, passenger side, and he motions for me to get out. And I'm like, this is it. Christopher Burris, the hashtag. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be shot right here on the highway of Texas. So I get out and I go behind the truck, and it is not what I expected, because the first thing that happens once we're face to face is I feel his energy, and he is terrified. He is terrified. He can't communicate. He can't put words together. He is melting in front of my face. And I don't make it any easier. I did not get, the talk that you hear about that black parents have with their kids about this is what you do when the cops
Here's what
come.
to do.
I never got that talk. So the way that I deal with cops is the way that I've always sort of instinctually dealt with them, which is to be an asshole. I let them know right off the bat that this is going to be problematic, that I'm watching every single thing, that I'm listening to every single thing, and that I'm going to let them know if they say something or do something that displeases me, and that I am aware, and that if you might want to do some bad stuff, and maybe you will, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to remember me. So I'm standing there behind the truck with this cop, and he's terrified, and I'm looking at him like, you better come up with something. And after a couple of minutes of wasted time, he looks around to the side of the truck and he motions for Charlie to come out. And then I'm able to see it actually happen right in front of me. He goes from not being able to communicate at all with me to turning around and talking to Charlie like it was no big deal. He says, so here's the thing. You got two choices. I can write you a ticket, or you can switch drivers. He says, if you drive the rest of the way, won't be a problem. He says, now, I'm putting this in the system. And so if he's caught driving again in the state of Texas, they're going to know. And he's going to go to jail. And Charlie's like, oh, thank you so much, sir. And yes, of course. Thank you. And we get in the truck, and we don't say a single word to each other. We never talk about it. We never discuss it. We just keep on moving along. The bottom sort of comes out in Vegas, where for some reason he gets so upset with me that it comes to the point where where it has to be addressed. We're standing in the parking lot, about to get in the truck just for the last leg of the trip to get back to LA. And I'm just like, what is your problem with me, dude? Like, what is your deal? And he says, you're gay. And I'm like, I mean, first of all, I don't know what that word means, but what are you talking about? Here's what's really interesting is that Charlie is not homophobic in any way, shape, or form. No. His roommates are gay. He's very, very comfortable with gay people, right? Okay. So he explodes, you're gay. Okay. And he's like, and you never talk about it. Well, that might be true. There's probably some reasons for that, which if you're my friend and you want to know, all you have to do is ask me. But instead, however he had processed that and however he understood it, he held on to it until it was too late. Even in the face of evidence to the contrary, such as me writing about it. I wrote a story about going home and wanting to tell my mother about being molested and how it had impacted my relationships and impacted my attraction to both men and women and my entire sexual history, right? And I'd written this into a story and I'd shared it with Charlie. And he read it. Charlie's also a writer. And he read it and he was not impressed. He said it was very anticlimactic because I realized during the writing of the story that I wasn't ready. And so the end of the story was, I'm going home, but I'm not ready to have the conversation yet. And he just shat all on that, so much so that I put it away. But I remember very distinctly that in that story, there is the discussion of my complexities. So even if you as my friend felt like I wasn't talking about it, I've given it to you in the way that I can talk about it. I've given it to you in a way that creates the possibility of a deeper understanding if you want it. So we have this explosion in Vegas. He drives the whole rest of the way back to LA. The next day we go, thank you. We go to the airport to fly back to New York. There's a problem at the counter with my ticket, so I have to go up to the counter. He goes straight on through, and I never see him again. I missed that flight, and I literally never see him again. At this point, Charlie and I had been friends for almost 10 years. And just like that, it was done, and it was gone. But I made it back to New York. Contacts in my eyes. I had not gone to jail, and I had not been arrested, and I had not died, right? And I had not been shot by a cop. So this was all really, really great stuff. But soon after that, I did lose my contacts. And so I had to navigate trying to figure out my relationship with Satchmo in this new vulnerable state. In this new state where I don't have access to his eyes. Whoa. I can hear him. And I can hear what's underneath that, right? But I can't actually look him in the eyes and see what's there. Even this close, even 6 inches away from each other. Still blurry. I lost a contact today.
Today.
On my way over here.
Shit.
I got ready to come, and I go into my contact case to put it in my eye, and it's just not there.
Oh, fuck.
I don't know where it is. It might be in my apartment somewhere, and I literally might find it. So I'm going to go home tonight, and I'm going to look for my contact. But you know what? Either way, what I've learned is the goal for tomorrow is to wake up and to figure out a way to see. Contacts or no. That's
The
it.
end. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I can see your lipstick, though.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very, very bright.
From the bed, turn the spark to a fire.
This episode was mixed and mastered by Irving Gadori, igrecording.com on the interwebs. My cover art was created by Shauna Shea, whom you can find on 99 Designs. And this remix of my original intro music was created by Kid Mental, an a cappella beatbox musician, a Black creator you can support right now. Get a theme song of your very own by hiring him on Fiverr, highly recommended, or becoming his patron on patreon.com/kidmental.
Embrace like a fire, the cherished moments shared like stars in the sky. As the sun sets horizontal with Lila. From the bed, turn the spark to a fire. Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila.
So until next time, may you have someones to love, something to fight for, and something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to gathering up my courage and learning how to surf. Thank you for listening. Thank you for getting horizontal. And I hope you can hear the sea.